lift your head like me. You got to wear your collar with dignity. How it was
Luck is beautiful.
I said, sing it along.
Luck is beautiful.
Say, I'm black and proud. It's high time that we get rid of that old slave mentality.
And a very good evening to you. Welcome to Politics 101 this evening. Coming in there with our intro. Black is beautiful. Black is beautiful. Tonight we're going to be talking about the 1823 slave rebellion. We are in the 200th anniversary, observing the 200th anniversary of the 1823 slave rebellion. And of course, we know members of the British, one of the British families that benefited from slavery, the Gladstone family. They owned plantations in Guyana, and they are in Guyana to make an apology. There was an event this morning hosted by the University of Guyana and the Reparations Committee, and quite some movement there on that front. So we are going to be talking about that tonight. We have a number of guests who were supposed to pass by. We were expecting Pastor London to pass by. We're expecting Simpson De Silva, Dr. Simpson De Silva. Dr. Simpson De Silva is part of the 1823 committee. We're expecting Attorney Darren Wade to pass by, and Takumo Ogunse. So we're expecting a full house tonight. So please share the link and let everybody know that Politics 101 is on. Let everybody know that Politics 101 is on, and that we are going to be talking tonight about 1823 Revolution Revolt, the Demerara Revolt, as it is called. We are going to be talking about that, and we're going to be talking about the apology. So we're going to be getting into reparations. And did you all see the president statement on the apologies by the Gladstones? And it was quite a statement. Began, of course, by talking about slavery and trying to link slavery with indentureship, because you know that's a long-standing issue. Some Indian activists, Indian Guyanese activists and scholars have, from time to time, argued that slavery and indentureship were the same thing. Indentureship was as bad as slavery, and it has caused quite a bit of a stir. And we were able to push back on that narrative. Indentureship was a different institution to chattel slavery. Of course, chattel slavery, the slaves were deemed to be not human. They were deemed to be property. They did not have rights under the law. It was the most inhuman institution in the world has ever seen, mankind have ever seen. And then indentureship, those who came as indentured, first of all, did not come against their will. They came on contract. The conditions were harsh. Yes, the conditions were harsh, but they were free people. Free people. Um, they were able to practice their religion. They were able to keep their names. They did not lose their humanity under the law. And to link the two is really to give a false sense of history. And the outcome would be the watering down of slavery. And the Gladstones were involved in slavery. Um, they were involved in slavery. They owned the plantations, and they were also reportedly involved in the indentureship. In that it was felt that the first two ships that brought indentured laborers from India were owned by the Gladstones. And so there is, because they were involved in both schemes, people are tending to link the two, but we feel that that is dangerous. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Politics 101. We're waiting on our guests to check in. And once they're here, we are going to begin that conversation. Politics 101 tonight on a Friday night. Welcome all of you who are joining us from Guyana, those of you who are joining us from outside of Guyana in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada. Good evening to you. Those of you joining us from St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts, Bahamas, the Bahamas. Welcome. There are some people who are joining from the U.S. Virgin Islands. Welcome. Welcome to Politics 101. Good evening and good night to you in England, in other parts of Europe. Welcome again to Politics 101. Good evening. Good evening to those of you from North America, New York metropolitan area, Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, New Jersey. You're part of the metro area there, but New Jersey, welcome. Welcome to Politics 101. Those of you who are joining us from Linden in Guyana, special welcome to the Lindeners. Special welcome to the Lindeners. How about you out there in Paramaribo, Nikeri? Those of you who are in French Guyana, Cayenne. Those of you who are in France, welcome to Politics 101. Tonight we are going to be talking about the significance of the 1823 rebellion, and we are going to be talking about the apologies, that were given. Let's while we wait.
A message of hope, a message of love to our people and the rest of the world for the rest of the 90s in time. We seem to feel that life is over just because we throw a few pennies down the gutter. We seem to feel everything is lost, so we fighting to get back something at any cost. But while we fighting and we fighting just to get back that little something, we forgetting we know nothing of this world in which we live in. Someone greater put this world together, so we must remember. In times of plenty, we must be grateful. In times of sorrow, we must be strong. In times of joy, we must be thankful. For life really has its up and its down. In times of disaster, we must be ready to get together and move racism out the way. And if you listen to this watchword from your lover, black darling, tomorrow would be a better day for you and you and you. We meet a world today with 4 seasons. Now who is we to try and find out what's the reason and what goes wrong? So must come back wrong. So why that is so? Nobody don't know. And there are so much other mysteries that nobody still can answer. So we just gotta sit down and keep looking to the future, because this world is not yours to control. It is just to behold. In times of plenty, we must be grateful. In times of sorrow, we must be strong. In times of joy, we must be thankful. For life really has its up and its down. In times of disaster, we must be ready to get together and move racism out the way. And if you listen to this watchword from your lover, black darling, tomorrow would be a better day for you and you and me. As we go through this life we live in, we must know by now that this world owes us nothing. So live your life and just enjoy it. And let's try to leave this world better than we find it. Because the maker of this world with nobody have no contract, it have no paper that could tell you yesterday is going to come back. Look ahead, for tomorrow you're dead. After all is said, in times of plenty we must be grateful. In times of sorrow we must be strong. In times of joy we must be thankful. For life really have its up and its down. In times of disaster you must be ready to get together and move racism out the way. And if you listen to this watchword from your lover, black darling, tomorrow would be a better day. Keep the faith, keep strong.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Deep, 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 deep philosophy there. Deep philosophy from the Black Stallion. You know, I always say I love being West Indian. I love being black. I love being Guyanese. I love it. The brother there in times. Deep philosophy, deep philosophy. He didn't go to a university and read Plato and Socrates and Aristotle. He lived in a place called the Caribbean, and from the experiences around him, he learned his philosophy from the history of African people. He learned his philosophy. In times, let me get together and move racism out the way. That kind of lyrics, that kind of music can only come from where it came from, the experiences of our people. And that is why this question of slavery is important. It is very important because it tells us a lot about our society today. You know, if we remove slavery, if we wipe it out from our history, our experiences, our lives would be so totally different. And so a lot of people, they can't wipe slavery out from our history. What they're trying to do is to water it down and to get Black people to ignore it. Good evening, Everett. And I know, brother, you reach out to me a lot. Sometimes I don't get to answer you as timely as I should. And I, you know, as we would say, in our villages, I want to beg pardon because so many messages come through and I don't get to answer them as timely. Some of them I don't get to answer at all, but every now and again, when I get the time, I'm able to go through and to answer some of them. Keep the energy flowing, keep the messages coming. As I'm saying, if you take that experience of slavery away, you take away the meaning of the Caribbean, the Americas, Africa, Guyana, the world. The world, Europe would not be where it is had it not been for slavery. God bless Walter Rodney, how Europe underdeveloped Africa. God bless Eric Williams, capitalism and slavery. And there's so many more texts, so many more songs, so many more calypso, reggae music, hip hop, jazz, the blues that tell that story. If you take away slavery, then nobody owes us anything. Entitlement. The other night, Brother Vincent Alexander was on a program with, what that by name from BV, he used to be a PNC boy. He's now the Minister of Labor. Let's forget the name. Joe Hamilton. I never really see Vincent Alexander get vexed, but he got vexed that night. Because here was a Black man sitting down and talking about Black people must take responsibility. He took responsibility for the evolution of wealth in Europe. We took responsibility for the world. We took responsibility for civilization in Guyana. Black people must take responsibility. Go to hell. And this is coming from a Black man. What is the solution? The solution is pay me with damn money. Pay us for 200 and odd years of free labor. Entitlement. If any group of people is entitled to anything in Guyana, is the African. All of our peoples are entitled. We came here, we met the native Indians. East Indians and Chinese and Portuguese came afterwards. Everybody's entitled. But the African is the only one. She wasn't underpaid. Indians were underpaid. Chinese and Portuguese maybe. Africans weren't underpaid. They were not paid. And once you get that history right, then our demands on the state today would be put in proper context. And we ought not to play around with that. This whole thing, black people this, but black people that, but. No, there's no but. There's no but. The fact that our foreparents were not paid, and not only that they were not paid, they were brutalized. They were killed. They were murdered. They were decimated. They were dehumanized. It has an impact on our condition today. Every little boy and little girl, they gotta leave school because the parents can't make it. And they gotta leave school to go and do a hustle on the road. It is because of slavery. And don't let people tell you it is because they don't take personal responsibility. We don't take personal responsibility for our children. They try to tell black people don't take responsibility for their children. When all of them we grew up poor, and some of us made it to be something, and look back and tell those people that didn't take responsibility for their children. Good evening. We are going to talk this talk tonight. Let me bring in my guests who are here. I know Brother Nigel London is here. Brother Takuma Ogunfe is here. Brothers, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Hines, and your viewers, good evening.
Greetings to all of you. Thank you for having me here. Greetings to you, Brother Takuma.
Thank you. Let's begin our conversation on this apology by the Gladstone family that is visiting Guyana, and they have taken responsibility for the acts of their foreparents, acknowledging that our narrative was always right, and they've apologized. What is the meaning of that apology? What positive can come of that apology? And how can that apology, while positive, mask some things? That's what I want us to get our teeth into to begin with. Let me get your initial responses to that apology by the Gladstone, what it means in a larger sense, and then we're going to dig in to some of the more specific questions. I'll start with you, Brother Ogunse.
The first point I want to make is that it demonstrates, the very nature of the colonizers, and that after it took them over 200 years before a family of one of our slave masters could arrive at the point that it is necessary for them to make an apology on the behalf of their foreparents. Now, we are still to get an apology from the state of Britain. And I think it just demonstrates the inherent brutal logic of European society and European behavior, even in the context of a historical fact that is unchallengeable. And for them to take so long to get around to dealing with the question of reparations for Africans speak quite a lot of where European civilization and their culture stands, despite all the claims of human rights and all of the things that they normally echo. But it is good that the Gladstone, the younger generation Gladstones, decided that the time is ripe for them to take responsibility for the actions of their parents and their foreparents, and to come to Guyana, a site or a place where their family had plantations and enslaved thousands of African people, to make this historical apology. And I think it is a step in the right direction, but it is a long, long way from what is necessary to bring justice for the Africans, given enslavement and given our demands for reparation. But it is an interesting start. But more importantly, I think it puts pressure on the Guyanese state in the context of its present treatment of Africans to recognize the backwardness of their position. And I hope that they will see this action by the children of the enslavers as an indictment to the Guyana state and those who rule the Guyana state, and for the Guyana state to come to grips with the just demand of the African community for reparations from the state of Guyana. We're hearing you, David.
Brother Nigel, you can come in.
Thank you, and once again, greetings to you, Dr. Hines, to your viewers, and to Brother Tacoma. Let me say that I have no interest in any apology from any Caucasian, especially descendant of one who would have done injustices to my people to the extent of Mr. Gladstone. What I would be impressed by is if these people were to say that the Queen, though she's deceased, Charles now, Harry, William, they're all thieves and criminals. Now, when you speak like that to me, at least I would have some clue that you intend to be honest and to be upright in your actions. I don't have any interest in any apology whatsoever. It is not a step in any direction for me. Because as a counselor of many, I know of men who beat women and say, I'm sorry. What? I know of men who killed women, and I had to go to court to sit in these situations. And he stood before the judge and said, I'm sorry. And what? I don't want to, sorry for being upset, but tonight, Dr. Hines, you may see another side of me that people don't normally see. I don't want to hear any apology from anybody. Because, and let me please note for the viewers' sake, my forefathers, it wasn't free labor. If I come to cut your grass, Dr. Hines, and you say, here's someone, I say, no, it's okay. That's free labor. I decided to do it for nothing. There's a difference in reference to slave labor. We were forced, beaten, and killed to do things. There was no negotiation had. So to come today to hear a family showing up in Guyana to say, listen, we're sorry. They didn't condemn, to me, in my view, to the extent that it should be condemned, that King Charles is called, is a criminal. Because they're all knowledgeable of the wealth that they have and how they acquired it. And he's yet to return one piece of treasure to our people. I don't want anything but any apology. Yeah, forget it. Not tonight. I have no interest in them. No.
Pastor London there. Sorry, go ahead, Brother London.
No, that's fine. I'll take a moment to thought.
And I am glad that we are having this conversation. And I know two other brothers were supposed to join us, and they're both delayed. But I think these conversations are important because they need those who have committed those crimes and those today who are committing crimes of humanity against the African must also understand the mood in the Black community. The mood in the Black community. All right. Pastor London, let me take you in another direction, and then Brother Ogunse is going to come in on it. This attempt to link again, because it has been done before,
Right.
to link the immigration indentureship system to slavery as almost the same. Talk to us about that, and talk to us about the danger of that kind of discourse.
Thank you. It's not just dangerous, it's actually quite insulting, because those who were indentured, they had an arrangement. They were told that you're going to come to this area, you're going to work for a particular sum of money, and at the end of your tenure, you have a right to return. We had no such offers made to us, none whatsoever. Though the indentured servants were ill-treated and mistreated in certain situations, they still had the right to return. The African descendants, and the Hebrews who were among them, had no such opportunity. So to be reckless in saying that we all suffered at the hand of the white man, of the slave masters, and as a result of that, it is similar in our experience. It is not. Apart from that, the indentured servants, especially those who came from India, were so impoverished that a minuscule sum offered to them was exciting and attractive enough for them to get here. The African descendants who were brought here, many on the Africans, I should say, our forefathers, these people in many instances were leaders, businessmen. That's why when they were what they call freed, they were able to do business yet again, because it was within us. So it is insulting for anybody to tell me, as the Fanali and others would try to do every so often, that it is not quite dissimilar in reference to our experience. It is very, very dissimilar. And it is extremely dangerous for people to say to them that what you suffer for these hundreds of years is not such a big deal.
Brother Ogunse, we live in a society in which fear is driven into Black people when it comes to telling their story. Because if you tell your story in a multi-ethnic society like ours, you are deemed to be racist, you're deemed to be anti-Indian, anti-Portuguese, you're deemed to be purveyors of hate speech. And in that regard, over time, Black people have stifled their own story. They have been less than forthcoming. With what Dr. London said here tonight, for example, that he wants no apology from no Caucasian, no white man after the... Very few Black people are going to be brave enough to stand up and say that in public, even though they believe it and they want to say it. Anyhow, Ogunse, come in.
Yes, I don't think that you could compare slavery with indentureship with slavery. This is a old discourse that every now and then arrive. It's raised its head in Guyana. I remember it even when I was a youth. So it's nothing new. But what is it? In most cases, what is significant, it always seems to be raised in a political context where Indian leaders are activists in responding to the just demands of African people, seeks to negate that demand by trying to argue that, look, we suffer just as equally as you. And I think that it is totally, a non-issue for me. You can't compare indentureship with slavery. In fact, the British negotiated the indenture program with the Indian government. The Indian authorities, agree, and they make sure that the various stipulations in the contracts and the arrangements, had input from India. So I don't know how any rights activists could, think that indentureship is anything close to slavery. While it had aspects of brutality, nothing to compare with Africans.
All right.
They were
Oh,
allowed to keep their
let me
family.
stop you there, Ogun. You asked the question. I don't know how people could compare the two, but they're comparing it. Why are they comparing it?
Well, they're compared, and especially in the context of Guyana at present. To me, it's to water down the just historical claims of Africans for reparation and for um, the state and the society to begin to address tackling the historical injustices and the consequences of those injustices on the life of African people. And they don't want to deal with that. And the way they're trying not to deal with that by saying, look, we also suffer the same way like you. So it's a political ploy to negate our argument and in a way to justify the domination that the PPP is on, the course of domination the PPP is on, and I think that it is in some respects different from the early arguments, let me say 50 years ago. I think 50 years ago, when some of these things raised its head, you could say, well, it's some intellectual confusion, intellectual misunderstanding of the two historical processes. But I think in the present situation, given the length of time of this debate in Guyana and the Caribbean and elsewhere, for any group of Indian leaders or Indian activists to take that position, is on, I can't say unthinkable because they're doing it, but it can't be justified. And it is not by accident. So it is a response that is tied to some sense of march that has developed in sections of the Indian community and the Indian leadership as it relates to Guyana and by extension Africans.
Brother London, we have oil wealth, and the oil wealth is potential wealth for the people of Guyana. Note I say potential wealth for the people of Guyana. The question is raised, who controls that wealth? In whose hands that wealth goes? And we know distribution is based on class. Some would argue gender. And in Guyana, because of our history, it's race. Link that attempt to water down slavery and to bring it on even keel with indentureship and the mad scramble for the control of the wealth in Guyana today.
Thank you. And before I do that, just permit me to vent more. I'm grateful that you afforded me the opportunity to sit here this evening, because so much has been welling up in me. Even when I saw the interview with Vincent Alexander and Joseph Hamilton, to say that I was livid is an understatement. I'm happy I was not in Joseph Hamilton's presence, because I don't know how I would have reacted to such a stupid person who would sit there to admit that in reference to Guyana's wealth, the Indo-Guyanese have all, he didn't say some, all of the control of ownership in reference to the local content. They own facilities. And then he had nerve to say, but it is irrefutable that the greatest in reference to numbers in the workforce are African descendants. Now, how much more stupid can somebody be? As Alexander said to him, that's exactly the point. Who owns these facilities? The Indians own it. Who is working for them? The African descendants. That's exactly what they want to have happen. So, in reference to now, especially the Indian leaders are saying, listen, those of Indian descent, it is not a big deal. We're similar in reference to our experience. I would not put it beyond them to say at some point that they too deserve some reparation because we suffer similar fate. So if we're going to give $10 trillion to the African descendants, then we deserve, they would say, 10 as well, because we all suffer the same thing. I know these creatures. They are deadly, they're dangerous, they are untrustworthy, and they have the power within their decadent minds to create any narrative whatsoever, because they know that in some circles they have the support to receive such narratives. So with the drive to control our wealth, there's also the drive to create a narrative to say we have the right to access this wealth in a greater proportion or in equal proportion to the African descendants, because we've all suffered the same thing. No, we have not. First of all, the indentured servants met canals dug here. They didn't come to dig them. They met plantations functioning here. The African descendants are not working anymore. So there was already infrastructural work done. They came to maintain what we have established already. So it can be similar. If my foreparent had to dig until he died, and your parent came and just planted the sugarcane, it can be similar situation. But it has to be a narrative created in Guyana that says it is similar, so that we can share equal portions of this wealth. And those who become uncomfortable with what I have to say to you tonight, I will say to make you uncomfortable. The Indian descendants do not deserve an equal share of what we have in the soil. And be uncomfortable as you want, because their experiences are not equal. And in fairness to people, and I'm speaking in mass now, in fairness to people, you have to give what is due. Any judge with whose word they saw would not sit and watch one person suffer for 300 years, although they won't live for that long. And another person who didn't go through anything to be compared and say you all deserve equal share. It cannot happen. It's unreasonable. Though it's uncomfortable and it's discomforting, it is unreasonable. And tonight I hope you can speak to the reasonableness of what I'm saying to you. Though it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable, and it's difficult. We know it's difficult to have these conversations in a multi-ethnic environment where there are ethnic sensitivities. But we can't cut your nose and spoil your face forever. And we Black people have been doing that. We have to constantly repeat, our fight is not against Indians. Our fight is not against Indians. I do it from time to time. We always, and I hardly hear Indian leaders say our fight is not against Africans. They don't have to say it.
No.
But we always feel that we have to say it. Joseph Hamilton sat there that all night and he's talking about these Black leaders who don't speak on behalf of him. Which Black leader will speak on behalf of Joe Hamilton? You are no longer Black. So we can't speak on behalf of you. The Joe Hamiltons of this world have surrendered their Blackness. It's as simple as that. So we don't speak for you. And we don't want to speak for you. And then went on to raise this question. I'm going to put it to you, brothers, that we say that only Black people can speak for Black people. Indian people must not speak for us. And then went on to call my name. Oh, David Hines was in this program and say Indian people cannot speak for Black people. And yes, I say that every day. Indian people cannot speak for Black people. Now, can Indian people lead us in political organizations? And so, yes, but in terms of our cultural narratives, our cultural demands, we have to speak for ourselves. An Indian or a Chinese or a Portuguese will learn about slavery and its effects through books. We know about slavery and its effects through lived experience. Takuma Ogunsi.
I agree with you. This question, given my age, we have walked through these things over and over.
But we're walking through it again in a new
way. We keep walking through it over and over. If we're talking about even more recent times, like let us say from the mid-80s, early 90s, it is Indian activists in the case like Rafi Devon and Roar who made big fuss and argued that the WPA cannot claim it speak for Indians, and the WPA can be an authentic, multiracial party because it doesn't speak for Indians. And he reintroduced this in a crude way that Africans can speak for Indians. So now for Hamilton to turn it to say that African activists are the ones who have been pushing this is like a misrepresentation of the reality. But putting that aside, I have known that we in Askria have always argued that given the history of our country, that each ethnic group has the right to represent its own interests and to state its own case to the country and the world. And I grew up knowing that that is not a problem, because I can't speak for the Amerindians, the indigenous people. I mean, I could support the activism and so forth, but by and large, my speaking can't replace their authentic right to speak for themselves. So I don't see that as Africans we should be too concerned at present with any accusation that our position is that Africans have to speak for Africans. The Indian leadership have made it very clear, and I haven't heard a PPP or an Indian rights activist challenge Rafi Dev and Roar on that position. And in fact, it had a direct impact on my own politics, because I wrote saying, I accept the logic, and while I don't agree, I accept the logic, and I will respect, the position of Indian rights activists and the leaders in the context of the total silence on the matter by other leadership organizations in the Indian community. And out of respect for them and their position, I adjusted my politics. I made it very a public issue. So I will say that we should not worry too much about that. We have to do what we have to do, and who is offended is offended. But I think that we are on the right side of history, because no real serious person who understands human society and history will seek to deny people the right to speak for themselves, even if they're in the same race. They be the same race, but I grew up in the countryside and you grew up in the city. There's some similarities, but there's also some differences. And I in the country got the right to speak for me. You in the city will not be able to fully represent my interests. So for me, that is a non-issue. And I totally ignore it. And I only engage it when I feel politically the necessity to engage it.
Brother Ogunsi, I don't disagree with you very often, but I don't think it's a non-issue. I think there is a there is a concerted effort to delegitimize Black leadership. And to say that those of us who are standing up on the side of African people as African people are not authentic issues. And it's not something that is directed at Indians, it's directed at Black people themselves. Because they're trying to get these new generation of young people who are far removed from the Black Power movement and don't have the same kind of racial consciousness as your generation. They're speaking to them. And they're saying to them, look, these Ogunse and London and Hines and them, they're really not your leaders, all right? Your real leaders are the Hamiltons who are coming into the government and getting some perks and carried to you. In that sense, it's a big, big issue, Brother Ogun. But I'll come back to you for a follow-up comment to our Brother London.
Thank you. When I heard that Hamilton was saying what we're speaking to, which is that some of us are saying that the Indian descendants who are leading in the PLP and so on can't speak for us. And he was saying that in a complimentary manner, or a man that he's of conviction in his part that they really can't. Again, it ignited within me a greater flame of rage in dealing with these people. Because Hamilton represents a new culture. And I'm happy that you raised that, Dr. Harris. And that new culture is now creeping into our society. Say, listen,
Yes.
we would speak, your finale and the likes. Listen, Jagdeo tried it. We will speak on behalf of African descendants to show that we're not racist. And I maintain that Bara Jagdeo, Irfan Ali, Anil Nandilal, and others cannot, not they should not, they can never speak for me. Now somebody else may say, well, they can represent my interests. They can't. Because what I have suffered in the loins of my fathers, they have not. Therefore, my experience as an African man, as a Hebrew man, is totally different. And then I observe the way they treat with my people. And I also observe that they're now seeking to say that even among the African descendants, we are not qualified to speak for ourselves. So they want to offer some assistance. They would utilize their economic strength and political strength to represent the cause of the Africans. They would not say to us that choose from among yourselves those you believe are capable of leading you and let them come to the table to speak on your behalf. No, because when they do that, they're giving the African descendants and the Hebrew descendants power to engage them. And they don't want that. They want it to appear as though they have a conscience like what happened with the abolition of slavery, as they said. The white man said, okay, then, you know, it's not fair. And those who arose and said they're Christians. So let us now free these African people, free the Hebrew people, because after all, God don't like it. And the Africans say, yes, master is a good master, because master say God wants us free. Are we? You can't.
But I don't say any follow-up.
Just to say that you misread what I was trying to say.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say, I'm not saying that there is no significance to what to the claims that is being made, but I'm saying for me personally, you see, I use a kind of reverse psychology in this situation. I don't care the hell with you say. My position is they could talk till the mouth, you know, get long. I am the one who will speak for my people and will continue to speak for my people. So in that sense, for me, it's a non-issue. You know, it's a non-issue. And I think Africans have to begin not to give too much of credit to some of the propaganda positions that the PPP is peddling and trying to get us to engage and to make it an issue. We have to develop in our people a dismissive spirit when they come with these, you know, ridiculous positions. We don't want to hear about it as a non-issue. You could talk here like, for we know who are we leaders. We know our leaders have the right to speak. For we respect you. Indians the leaders have the right to speak for Indians. Matter end. No more discussion. No deliberations.
Some African people, especially those who are gravitating to the PPP's line of march, are saying that and Joe Hamilton raised that question, and they're offended when we call them house slaves. We were calling people like them house slaves since slavery, and they are house slaves, aren't they?
We continue to call them house slaves.
Well,
Brother Nigel London.
It has to be defined so they can understand what is meant when people say it to them. Because are they free to do that which Jagdeo, Anil, and Efrael can do? If you're not free to act as though you own the plantation, then you obviously have to be a slave on it. Because there were only a few sets of people on the plantation. The owner, you had the overseers, who were the white men, but they were criminals and so on, who brought it just to manage the slaves. You had the house slaves, you had the field slaves. So if you are not an overseer, you have no power in the PPP. You have absolutely no power. You're not the owner, because you don't have the strength to say anything to Jagdeo or Anil and these people. Then what are you? And if and ever a matter of African-ness arises, Hamilton I call him the apologetic PM, because Peters, if they say you're racist, Peters has to, Mark Phillips, has to come on the scene and say, okay, it has been said by Dr. Hines that we're racist, and I made it say we're not racist. Now, if all that you can be chosen to do is to represent by instruction that which you know to be untrue, then obviously I have nothing else to call you. You are just a little bit more privileged in reference to certain circles, but you are not free to exercise your conscience. You're not free to even address that which you know to be atrocities. And I've dealt with them in this. I've dealt with those who said to me from their circle, listen, we know that you're right. We know that what you're saying is true. But man, you gotta understand that after all, this thing will take time and them that jag them by gotta humble sometimes, But they can't say that to Barrett. So the fact that you can't say what you want to say to them speaks to me that you're a slave. You have to do what they say. You cannot express yourself freely. So if they want to have a new definition or description of it, they're free to present one to me and I'll consider it.
We are joined by Attorney Darren Wade. Darren, good evening.
Good evening, Brother Hines, and to your other panelists. I noticed Brother Nigel London. I noticed Mr. Takuma Ogunzi. A pleasant good evening to you and everyone once more. I should have been on earlier, but I'm currently on duty. However, I believe I could give you a minute or two, and subject to the battery of my phone also.
So let's get straight. You had a letter in this morning papers. You called me early in the week and drawing to my attention the risk that is being run here of conflating indentureship with slavery. And you had a letter in today's paper, which I found to be very, very, very on point and instructive. Expand on your concern here.
Yes, Brother Hines, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. So we must understand context. We must understand the enslavement of African. I'm sorry about that. Brother Lincoln Lewis is trying to get me. They're trying to get on to me. Yes. We need to understand, as I was saying, enslavement and what transpired during and after slavery. At emancipation, 1838, the system was put in place for the black man not to succeed in Guyana. All of the other races that came after the Africans were given, whether or not they were paid, lands, and so forth. So we cannot treat 300 or 400 years of slavery with a contractual arrangement. Yes, we acknowledge that descendants of indentured laborers has the right to espouse the claim. Yes, the way how they were treated based upon the historical account, they were unfair. But we cannot conflate all of the struggles together. Because what we do, we will dilute the African struggles. When we left the plantation, we were not given land, we bought lands. And even despite we bought those lands, the system, the laws, the policies that were put in place, the flooding out of lands, and so forth, to make us fail as a people. So to see statements being made in the newspapers and so forth, and an attempt to conflate them to make this appear as though they are one of the same, isn't true. It isn't correct. It is sudden that as a people we cannot be honest with ourselves. We cannot be honest with each other. And the issue of equity, the issue of giving of affirmative action to ensure that we are on the same level with everyone else. No wonder we cannot contribute or cannot participate rather in the oil industry. Albeit our ancestors' bodies are in those seas. They jump over the ships whilst coming to Guyana. Albeit. Thank you, Brother Hines.
Brother Darren Wade. And Darren, we try to get as much as we can from you before you have to slip away. I think we have to be frank. And we have to be frank. I think the other ethnic groups in Guyana, Amerindians, Chinese, Portuguese, East Indians, Caucasians, until they come to grips with the fact that slavery made the African experience unique, and to understand where Black people are coming from, you have to put that in your consciousness. And I think sometimes we Black people contribute to it in trying to give the other ethnic groups a way out from coming to that understanding. Look, we're not moving anywhere in this country until we come to grips with the fact that I got half of this population that we're living with who suffered in ways that we have not suffered. And so therefore their demands are going to be different from ours. And race relations are really grounded on that coming to consciousness on the part of the other ethnic groups. I think we have to say that as frankly, and I'm saying it frankly here tonight, that part of the holding back of Guyana is the hesitancy of the other ethnic groups coming to that understanding. Brother Takumo Gunse.
I agree with you.
Yes,
I might be.
brother. I think I absolutely.
All right. Okay.
No,
Darren,
let Brother Wade
Darren
go.
go.
Yeah,
Darren go.
he got to leave.
Yes. Go ahead, Darren.
Yes, brother. I agree with you. Totally, 100%. But history will teach us that or teaches us rather, when the other nations, the British, the Spanish, they attempted to colonize this Guyana, what is now known as Guyana. They were unsuccessful because this was the wild coast. It was the Dutch who used the African slave. Of course, the Dutch has the expertise in irrigation, that took lands from the sea. The Guyana was built by enslaved Africans. The roads were built by enslaved Africans. The canals, the water conservancies, they all was built by enslaved Africans. In my village in Litchfield, in the Back Dam, which is several miles inland, we have sandbanks with seashells. And the older folks will say to you that the sea, that the old people say that the sea was once there, it must go back there. But what transpired during slavery is because of the work, the lands that were claimed from the sea, that is now called the coastal land of Guyana. So the contribution of enslaved Africans is unparalleled. And we were not paid for the work that we did in building this country for free. We were not given lands. We were not given monies. Like, for example, the Portuguese, they were placed in the so-called middle class after the whites. They were placed there. And we call Chetty Jai, the famous statement by Chetty J again, that blacks is the bottom of the social ladder. But if that is the case, what is being done to lift us up? And we must be careful with this, the issue of reparation. And if we want it, and those who may want to argue that our history and our struggles are the same, because they may want to claim equal part of the pie when it should be equity. That is the issue. And I respectfully, at this point in time, beg to take my leave.
Counselor, we grant you that. But as a man of the law, you will know you owe us. All right?
Yes.
All right. Brother Darren Wade, it's good to see a young man standing up and being very clear. Thank you very much, Brother Darren. Brother Gonse, then back to you on this question of the other ethnic groups really coming to grips with that historical fact, and that we're not going anywhere unless we all agree on that.
I fully agree with you, but you see, I make a distinction between the political leadership and the intellectual class in the Indian community and the Portuguese community, and the masses in those communities. I think there may be a good case to argue that among the masses, there could be, a reasonable argument made that the way history was taught in our schools, the bulk of the population came out with a less than sufficient understanding of the African enslavement, and more so the consequences of that enslavement. But I don't make the same argument for the leadership. I think the leadership of those groups, Indian, Portuguese, and the intellectual opinion makers are well aware of the difference in the condition. But it suits their purpose, okay, to argue a narrative the way they argue in order to promote their own self-interest and their own narrow group interests. And that is why, and I guess because I've been in this thing so long, we've gone through this argument over and over and over and over and over in the 50 odd plus years, that I have reached a point that Africans have to stop talking and doing and do.
Yeah, but we are doing, and we're not doing, Brother Ogunse. Listen, and I hear the point that you're making. And the very 50 odd years that we are doing, don't you think the Indian masses have access to and understand? Look at this program. Nobody's stopping Indian masses for coming on this program and other programs. Yes, they didn't learn it in schools, but they now can learn it in the open space. And we have to put some responsibility on the Indian working class too, as we are putting responsibility on the African working class for understanding the African condition, because they're African working class people who also have to be educated. And so this shielding of the Indian working class, I think, doesn't hold the same sway as it did 20, 30, 40 years ago, because they have access now to these kinds of discourses. Anyhow, back to you.
I am not concerned of shielding.
Right.
I think that you see, I mean, I have studied this thing long and carefully.
Yes, I know.
I think Guyana have reached a point where I don't think it's a lack of argument is the problem. The problem in Guyana now is that if Africans believe that this is our condition and this is our solution, we have to fight for it and begin to change the reality concretely in the society. And it is changing that reality will open up, okay, the possibility of a genuine meeting of minds between we and the other Indians, Portuguese, Amerindians, and everybody. You see, it is not, it's on rare occasions. History will show that simply on the meeting of minds occurs simply out of rhetoric. It is when rhetoric is reflective of the concrete situation that poses a certain logic. The human mind has very little but to engage that logic. And I think that we reach a point in Guyana on these matters. And you see how quickly things will fall in line. It is African political, economic, and social weakness that allow this discussion to be so pronounced in the society. The day we transform some of those relationships, you're going to see you will want to live in the same country and the same people.
Right.
So for me, at my age now, I am more preoccupied in getting that done. Yes. I don't care what much what people say. I mean, yes. I know we have to engage and so forth, but the energies have to be changing our concrete situation in the country, and in so doing, we force people to adapt to the new reality and let a narrative come out to the new reality.
Brother London?
Dr. Hines, I see beneath your handle, your name is 1823. And let me just issue a caveat or disclaimer to all who are monitoring the broadcast. What I'm about to say is my view. It's not Brother Tukuma's or Dr. Hines. If you want to come and arrest me, arrest me. I really don't care. I'm speaking for me. 1823, that Demerara rebellion was caused by, and even 1763 and others, and the other minor ones, when the enslaved observe that there is no room for negotiation because Massa didn't want to talk. And our plight was obvious. We either fight or we die, like the others we've seen die before. And out of that arose a cause in the minds of those who were enslaved. Say, you know what? We'll die anyway. But at the end of the day, these people have to understand we will not accept this condition any longer. That is what helped to trigger, to some extent, Gladstone saying, all right, we're losing too much, so let's chill. I am here to say that I've observed carefully as a young man, I still feel that way, young, that systems were created after slavery. And I want my brothers who are within my age and younger to hear me carefully, and sisters. Policing was created, even the laws in Guyana are created now, to prevent rebellions in this country. So what has happened to us as a people is, the leaders will rise and say to us, Sarah, if you think that we're being so terrible towards you, ask Sarah for help. Ask the European community. Ask the diplomatic corps. Just reach out to the, what are we not going to say, not the diaspora, the international community. Reach out to them. Don't fight. Just ask outsiders to come to help you. The system is ingrained in us now to say that if we only even talk in a manner that's considered violent, they'll arrest me tonight. Say, listen, you are seeking to engender violence. But I'm telling you that I have never met a group of people in reading history who were willing to sit forever and be treated unjustly, and they decide that the best thing to do is roll over and die. It hasn't happened. The Indian history doesn't lend itself to that. So Jagier can't try to make me what he is not, what his history doesn't speak to. Even the Indians said to the British in themselves, we are not going to do this to us all the time. Because they recognize that the British were just continuing to trample on them and they decided to fight. I'm saying to us as the people in this country, and to those who seek to be oppressive towards our people, if you want peace, then do what is right. I'm not here to play anymore with anybody. Because the hopscotch has been going on for too long. Anybody, in my view, who wants to speak to me about peace, even as a boy, I used to tell people that. If you don't want me to hit you, then don't provoke me. It's that simple. If you cross a certain line, I'm going to hit you. So if you cross the line and hit you, I can say I'm bad. When I told you if you go for this line here, I will deal with you. So we have got a society that's now created, and a culture created that says, listen, the laws don't permit you to speak in a manner that's harsh. Be careful because they'll arrest you. Because the white man who created these things know that when the slaves who were oppressed got together and decided in 1823 that we've had enough of you, it caused a serious collapse of their system. And today, we've got laws in Guyana that says, if you are grieved, go to the court, complain, but don't you dare speak to your people to say, we have to defend ourselves. Finally, I say before we proceed, if I notice that in my community, young men are being shot at innocently all the time, how can anybody in their right mind tell me that I should sit back and watch that and never address it in a manner that mirrors that which I see my brothers go through? How am I the bad one? Let's have this uncomfortable conversation. If I see you doing something to people that's unjust, how am I bad if I say that you shouldn't do it and you should be met with equal action? How am I the bad one? Why don't you say to those people doing it, stop? You shouldn't do that to these people. How hard is that?
Pastor London, Takumo Gonse, both agreeing that we've reached the point where we have to call a spade and that we have to force a change in the situation. I am putting this question to both of you because you all know it's true. Lots of Africans will tell us, Ma, we agree with what you all said, we agree with what you all said on the program. But we can't say them thing because if we said them thing, we ain't going to get Indians to come over and vote for us to win the government. a dilemma. Takumo Gonse, you got your foot in both the political party and the and the black struggle. How do we resolve that dilemma?
Well, David, is easy for me. It might be
Yeah,
harder
yeah,
for the
yeah. I'm
WPA.
asking
It may be
you.
harder for you. It may be harder for the WPA and the party, but it's very easy for me because I grew up in Askria, understanding a sense of democracy, which you know is not simply based on one man, one vote. And I am not a disciple of the one man, one vote Eurocentric form of democracy, but as part of the politics and what is the dominant political culture, you have to adjust. And I would say that Guyana experience on elections have solved nothing fundamentally. The same issues when I enter politics at the age of 16 is the same thing at 71. So for me, I would say the fight for crossover votes and say is irrelevant. We have to fight for a constitutional struggle that reshape the governance system in the country, that give justice to all the ethnic groups in the country. And electoral elections have proven not to be sufficient to give the kind of historical justices to all the various ethnic groups in the country. And as an African, I'm very concerned with the African condition. When would the Amerindians get the indigenous people get any significant justice based on one man, one vote, given their numbers? So for me, it is an easy matter that I am not interested in the politics of crossover vote, but to the extent that I'm in the WPA and the party, define its politics in a certain way, and to the extent that the WPA is in the wider political opposition, one may have to, and very often got to make compromise, to deal with the collective sense of march. But I, as a WPA activist or an African activist, is clear. Elections are non-issue for me. What we need is a constitutional struggle. And I prepare to go to war for that, fix the governance system, okay? Get ourselves out of the Eurocentric entrapment and let us develop an indigenous solution to our problem.
Brother London, I know this is meat for you. Sacrificing the black dignity and the black struggle at the altar of electoral politics.
Dangerous. Because I hear people say that to me, and I'm not even involved in anything in reference to leading a political party. And they say you have to be careful, London, because the Indian people won't vote for you if you speak like this.
Yes.
And I love to hear that, because it rings to me a tune that is very important in my mind, which is that in the interest of what is right, the ballot doesn't matter. And that's my conviction. If no one votes for me, as they put it, because I stood for what is right, then those who've not voted before what is wrong. That's my reason. So if an Indian man says, listen, because how you speak, I'm not voting for you, then don't. Because I'm not going to lie to myself and lie to my people to acquire the vote of someone who I know supports what is wrong. And I have to speak what is wrong for him to support me. Additionally, when I assess what my foreparents went through, 1823, 1763, and so on, I asked the question, which of them voted? None. So they were not liberated because they voted, they were liberated because they fought. I'm saying, like Brother Takuma, I do not see elections in Guyana as solving Guyana's crisis, because those who play with the power in this country know that the only hope they have is to keep people divided, and then you gain votes based on division. Those who understand systems say that let us stand on the principles that govern all people, which is supposed to be righteousness and justice. And if you are wrong to a people, I don't mind what ethnic group you represent, you are wrong. Now, when you have that position and you hold it dear to your heart, votes do not matter. So the crossover votes could stay where they are. If the crossovers would be compromisers, liars, and those who have what are called itching ears and love to hear lies. I don't want anything to do with you. I prefer to stand and fight with 5 strong men than 500 weak ones. That's my view.
Pastor London there tonight, and I think we have come to that point. It is that point. How do we balance the reality of what the system is electorally and how you get institutional power? That's a reality. But the other reality is that Black empowerment cannot wait on that. Black empowerment cannot be tied in a deterministic way to that. That Black empowerment has to do with people, bread and butter, has to do with whether they're able to send their children to school, has to do whether they're able to get lands to build houses, has to do with their very dignity.
Correct.
And to tie people's dignity to some crossover vote, trade your dignity for crossover vote, I think is an insult. And I am going to fight with all my might for Black people not to fall into that trap. Do I want, the party or parties that I support to get political power? Yes, I will fight for that. But what is the price I am prepared to pay for that? Is the price I am prepared to do it, to pay my Black dignity? Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. And for those of you who may be scratching your head, I want you all to do that. Because Black people have to work this out. Or else we're not getting anywhere in this country. I think that's basically what the brothers are saying here tonight. We got to work this out. And I think we have to work out strategy. Or people say you must have time and place.
Right.
Right. And this time and place, with this wealth that is coming and the potential for what this wealth is doing, we got to decide why we fight. Right? And we fight can't just be a crossover electoral fight. It has to be a fight that is grounded in this history of denial of the African. And we can open our mouth big and say it. And if they box them back. We have to be very clear on this issue that we're not compromising. We are not compromising. We're not against elections. I don't think neither of these brothers is saying that we're against elections or we're against political power and so on. But we are saying we're asking, what's the price we are prepared to pay for maintaining a system that is not geared towards the liberation of human beings? Brothers, your closing thoughts. Starting with you, Brother Ogunse.
Okay, I want to close by saying that, as I've said before, at this historical juncture, I think that the fate, in a big way, the fate of Guyana lies in what the Africans community collectively decide to do. I know, as a person who have been in the political struggle for years, I know the importance of collective struggle, but I also know that there are moments in history where the objective conditions doesn't allow for collective struggle. And a group of people or a group of races may very well have to be the ones to be the vanguard of their own liberation and the liberation of the country. And in the process of that, hope that other people will join the liberation struggle. What is important for me, and have always been important, is once I commit in the context of multiracial Guyana that as an African and an African leader, I will not support African domination of any ethnic group in Guyana. I have said it over and over the years, and that is what guides my politics. And having given that assurance, I feel comfortable. I feel liberated. If I have to march, me and me alone as an African people, I march in my own liberation. I think there is where Africans, society and struggle reach. And time is not on our side. We have a very narrow window. And I don't believe, I mean, I know the Indian community, I know the Indian masses, and I know all the contradictory behaviors. But I don't want here to speak for Indians. Indians will have a chance to speak as we march forward to define the relationship they want with us going forward in the future and how they see the country. You see, this election thing allows us to play all kinds of sophisticated games. But if you draw the line and we have real decisive struggle, people have to show their true colors one way or the other. And I have long prepared and have been showing my colors.
Brother London?
Thank you again for having me share this platform with you. And to those who are viewing, I would like to close by reminding you that very often Guyana is described as, and rightfully so, this land of 6 ethnic groups, or they say 6 races. But I would dare to ask any honest thinking Guyanese, because the conversation about seeking to make parallel or equal the struggle of the African and the indentured servants remains foremost in my mind, because I know the danger of it. I ask you in all honesty, why is my surname on this screen London? And you know that I'm African, as you would say. Why then is Barrett's name Jagdio? Why do you have Nandalal? Why you have Manik Chan? Why you have Rup Narayan? Why you have Chinasu for the Chinese people? Why you have Finance for the Portuguese? Why did I lose what I came here with? If our struggles are the same, what was so unique about me that even my name was changed? It is because I am the only person in this country, in reference to people, who would have been owned by a man named London. My father, I don't call him grandfather, great-grandfather. My father was purchased. Yours had a negotiation made. Mine was bought at Rosignol. And London being the white man who owned him, that's why I'm going to change my last name. Because at this time in my life, I realized that the culture in Guyana through Jagdi and others isn't lending itself to my playing around with what I know to be true anymore. The fact that Priya could be called Manik Chan and Bart could be called a Jagdio tells me that your history is different from mine. So give me and others the right now, if you respect us, to speak for that which we have a right to reclaim, which includes even our name. Give us the right, with utmost respect, to speak on our behalf and to represent our cause. The least you can do is to respect it. Don't interfere with it. Because the reality that you will face out of this situation, I can promise you prophetically, it shall not be what you want to deal with. With that, I say thank you.
Apostle Nigel London, Takumo Okunse, black men standing up tonight and speaking to black people in their own name, We live in a society that there is no straight line to where we intend to go. We were brought here, some of us against our will, some of us voluntarily, and we are here. And we have got to make this space work. But some have given so much to make it work 400 years ago. And that has to be taken into consideration. It has to be taken into consideration. The burden of the black man, the black woman, the black child that burden is dictated by a particular history. And we have to make black people understand, while other people can solve their problem by going and dip their finger in some ink and put it on a piece of paper and go home and think all will be well after that. The African can't do that. We've been ducking with finger in ink since Guyana became independent. And our condition has not changed dramatically. We have to continue to duck with finger in ink. But we also got to duck with finger in another kind of ink, and that's the black ink. And say the blue ink and the black ink got to come together. We can say, let the black ink stay by the side because it gonna upset the logic of the blue ink. The blue ink and the black ink have the same logic for black people. That's what we're saying. And any leader who come to you and telling you just about the blue ink and not telling you about your black face and the black ink, they're lying to you. And your future in this country cannot be guaranteed just by the blue ink. It can be the blue ink and the black ink come together. That is our objective in the short term. Tomorrow, the next day, the next 2 years, that has to be our objective as black people. Election, yes, but black empowerment, a louder yes. A louder yes. There will always be elections. Elections not going to stop in Guyana. Let us understand that. Elections not going to stop in Guyana. But as Brother Ogun says, we have a small window to ensure that the wealth of this country, real and potential, that we get our equitable share. Our equitable share. And the time for talking in codes is over, at least at this historical juncture. We can't talk in codes anymore. When we talk in codes, we are disempowering ourselves and empowering other people. And yes, we who call ourselves black leaders, is only black people can tell we that we not their leaders. And there are hundreds of you all here tonight partaking in this discourse. And it says something about who you all think you all leaders are. We define ourselves yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And if we don't define ourselves, we're not going to be at the table to help define Guyana. We're making progress. I'd be the last to say, I think these brothers here tonight can't say that we're not making progress. I think over the last couple of years with the technology, we've been doing more than we've been able to do. But we still got work to do. And they want to stop this work. They want to stop this work, but they ain't going to stop the work. And we have to make that resolution. Those of us who belong to political parties, we can argue within our political parties, our positions. We have to argue. Those of us who are not in political parties are perhaps a little bit more liberated. But those who are not in political parties then say, I am acting in my own name so I can go and take a box of cook up. Right? I want with PNC and WPA and them. I go in and get a box of cook up on me $20,000. So both the black people in the party and outside the party, we got work to do. Our foreparents weren't liberated with a box of cook up. They weren't liberated with $20,000. They weren't liberated with soup. Soup from the master table. They weren't liberated. And so the work continues. And we're going to do that work day in, day out. And there are times when we're going to be on the mountaintop. And there are times when we're going to be in the valley. There are times when we're going to shout for them to hear. And there are times when we have to shoo-shoo. Because we don't want them to hear. We got to fight. We got to fight. We got to fight. My brothers, thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And the brothers and sisters out there, keep the faith. Keep the faith. Keep the faith. Keep the faith. It's a new emancipation. And it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. Good night. See you all perhaps on the weekend tomorrow night. And then next week we come back. We come back. We come back. We come back. We come back.
If you hear that,